All right. So if you're on a quest for the perfect niche, or you are trying to figure out what your purpose is as a coach, this episode's for you. And I'm like super fired up this morning about niching and finding your purpose or figuring out, where you want to be as a coach. Partly because I knew we were going to be talking about this today, but also because I think Ryan and we have some pretty good stories in terms of like how we've gotten at least this far. I mean, who knows where we're going to go from here, but we've had success in getting to where we are now. Also, I listened to this podcast this morning about a woman who, kind of figured out her niche, or not niche, I guess, but her purpose and her business by really just kind of falling into it. And I think that this is something that people don't really understand until you kind of can look back and connect the dots, because there's sometimes this urgency to figure it out now. Like, what is my purpose? What is my niche? What am I going to be known for as a coach? How am I going to help people? But what people don't talk about very often is just really trusting the natural process of finding your way, right? And recognizing that it's a path, like it's a journey to discovering what that ultimate end goal is, and you might start with one thing, but then end up doing something totally different. So that's what I want to talk about today on the podcast. What do you think about that, Ryan?
No, I want to talk about Halloween movies. Have you heard of Pumpkinhead?
No.
I hadn't heard of it either. I just this moment
Pumpkinhead.
noticed it on my other screen here in a chat, like a Facebook post. Somebody asked, "What are your favorite Halloween movies?"
Hmm.
And multiple people wrote Pumpkinhead. So I briefly Googled it. Doesn't look like my kind of movie. No, ma'am.
Hmm. I've never heard of that movie. I'll have to look it
So,
up.
but I mean, that being said, we probably should talk about niches.
Yeah.
And some people say niches, right? That's
Yeah.
a whole episode right there. Is it
Ugh.
niche? Is it
Ugh.
niche? Is it neither? In Canada, I think it's more common to say niche.
Yes.
Um,
Well, in the States, don't they say the riches are in the niches?
I think in the States, it kind of depends on the state or maybe depends on the person. But yeah, it's more common to hear niche rather than niche. But there's an E at the end of the word. If it were niche, would it not be NICH or NITCH?
Exactly. That's what I
Right.
think.
So, I mean, but hey.
We've got it right over here in Canada.
Mhm. But either way, regardless of how you pronounce niche, if you're a coach, probably you've given a good amount of thought to what, how and if you're going to niche, because the prevailing advice from all of the business leaders in the niching, not the niching, in the coaching industry is figure out your niche as soon as possible,
Hmm.
right? The riches are in the niches, as Alana said. I think, you can choose a niche and dive in and make it work. Or, as I think Alana and I both did, we, allowed our niches to develop organically. And this
Hmm.
is something that I think was instrumental to me being at the level of becoming, the success that I am now, is allowing things to develop organically and being a little bit patient and keeping my eyes open for indicators of what direction to move in.
Yeah, totally. And I would say the same thing. Like, I mean, man, I've had so many niches in the last just 2 years that I dove into and kind of like got really serious about. But then for some reason, they never felt authentic to me. Like I really felt that I was not forcing necessarily, but I wasn't like being true to who I am.
Yeah.
In a lot of the niches that I dove into. However, I must say I'm glad I did, because what it's allowed is like a huge library of resources in my head, which now allows me to have quite a lot of diversity when I am working with people, because I've gone deep on like a few topics that I can work on with people, which I think is super cool. And I wouldn't have had that as a resource had I not um, kind of forced myself to get into these specific niches that, that I've worked through. So that's this kind of the same thing. It's just sort of like organically I got to where I am now against sort of the advice from a couple of business coaches that I've had who were like, you must stay with this niche for at least 18 months. And I was like, no, I'm out after 6.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have a list
Well,
to,
yeah, we have a list. But
yeah,
we got 3 things that we need to address
yeah,
before we get into the list. We have a meta list of 3
we
things we
do.
need to address. We need to address your organic niche development, my organic niche development as the examples that we're going to share today,
Yeah.
and the list. I don't care what order we do it in. That's what we got to talk about, I
Yes.
think. Or
Yeah.
maybe back to the Halloween movies. I've never seen The Shining. Have you?
Oh, really? I see. That's one movie I have seen.
I've never seen it. I've heard
Oh,
it's long.
no, not really. You definitely want to watch it. Is it long? I don't know. I can't remember. Like, how long is a long movie? 2 hours?
It's 146 minutes. Okay, so it's 2 hours and 26 minutes.
Yeah. So it's kind of long.
2.5 hours. Okay, it's not as long as I thought. I was thinking it was like a 3.5 hour extravaganza.
No, it's a
Hmm.
pretty good movie.
Yeah.
Jack Nicholson, you
Jack
gotta love him.
Nicholson, Shelley Duvall. Yeah.
Okay. So how do we want to start here? Do we want to like share our stories through the list?
Yeah, we could do that. We could do that.
Or do
I
we
think
want to, I mean, we could also take these little notes prior to the list to move into the list.
I think would you agree that the thesis here is you want to have an idea on what direction you want your business to go. Hopefully you know who you definitely, what niche you definitely do not want to work in, and maybe a few niches that you're drawn to.
Yeah.
And as a starting point, and maybe what modality you want to use. Maybe you're really into hypnosis, or maybe you're really into NLP, or maybe you're really into breath work, or whatever you're really into. You want to like have a few kind of cues in your mind of the general direction you want to go. And then you also want to be keen on letting things develop organically at a pace that, works for you. Do we agree on that when it comes to a niche and developing a niche and establishing a niche?
Yeah, I think so. I think I would add to that you also want to know like what do you like on a big umbrella, right? Like what do you want to be known for in the world
Yeah.
too?
Okay. Yeah.
You know
That's
what I
part of it.
mean? Because like when
Yeah.
I think back to, even my fabric store, like I just wanted to help people,
The
you know,
fabric.
via fabric, but I
Yeah.
wanted to help people. Like the story that I created with that was just help people get back to something that brought them joy,
Yeah.
right? Which was sewing at the time for me. And not that I was a sewer, but like I knew that that was like a passion. So I would like kind of create content around like having a hobby and like what that does for you and how that can help your well being and blah, 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 blah. And I'm still doing that, but in like a totally different capacity.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I
Cool.
mean? So I think you kind of want to have this overall like, who are you being? What do you want to be known for?
Yeah.
You know,
Cool.
I
Yeah.
think that's important.
Good. Agreed. Okay.
Okay.
Let's get into the list.
Yeah, let's do the list. I think then it'll happen just organically. We'll be able to share our own stuff.
Yeah. I think the list here is the answer to the question, how do I allow my niche to develop organically? I think
Yeah.
that's what this list is. Okay.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Number 1 is self-reflection. It's funny that this is number 1 on the list because this is like what I see a lot of coaches really not doing. It's like they're asking everybody but themselves about what direction to take the niche. They're, posting in Facebook groups and in masterminds, what should my niche be? What niche is good? Is this niche good? Blah, blah, blah. At some point, you got to accept responsibility and look inward and ask yourself, who do I want to serve?
Yeah.
Self-reflection.
Well, and also just like understanding yourself, like an understanding, like, what do I want? like I said before, who do I want to be? Like, like mark do I want to put on this world? Um, and like, how is that going to, like, what niche is going to align with that? Right.
Yeah.
Um, and I think too, the other thing is like really looking at your values, like like, are you the type of person who is just getting into this whole coaching thing because you want to make a lot of money? Well, then, you may pick a niche then that is going to align with that value. So, maybe it's like if you're a hypnotherapist, maybe it's just like, I just want to work with people who want to quit smoking because that that's like a need people have and it's easy and like people are going to look for you and done. But if your value is like, creating community or helping people, or I don't know what it might be, but like then you would approach your niche from like a different perspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the self-reflection. It's really like looking inward and being like, what do I want? Like, why do I even want to be a coach? And I think we've talked about this before. And I don't think it's necessarily to go crazy on your why, you know what I mean? And figuring out like, why am I doing the thing? But it's important to have an understanding as to like, why are you getting into this type of work? Because this type of work isn't for everybody, in my opinion. Like it takes a
Yeah.
certain person to want to do this type of work and help people and coach people on whatever it is that you decide you want to coach them on. Um, like in my opinion, it's a real passion. Like for me, this work is like a huge passion.
Yeah.
It's just like my life.
So in other words, self-reflection.
Yes,
Yes.
self-reflection. Do
Okay.
that. And it might be boring, right?
Yeah.
Which is
Well,
why I think people
or
skip it.
yeah, or people might just not be ready for self-reflection yet, or they believe that there's not enough there, which actually kind of leads us to our next point on the list, which is gain experience. The
Yeah.
more people you've served in a coaching context, the more equipped you are to reflect on the experiences you've had and your strengths and guide yourself in the direction that you want to go. So for me, part of developing my niche really was gaining experience by just offering coaching to as many people as I could, offering the trainings that I was equipped to offer, and paying keen attention to what did I enjoy doing, what did I not enjoy as much, who was responding really well to what I was offering, who was not responding. you know um, any experience you can get is invaluable and is more and more ammunition for you to really zero in and hone in on your niche. I think another kind of misstep that some people make is that they want to decide on a niche without having worked in that niche, without having served people in that niche, and then go all in.
Yeah. And what if you don't
Uh,
like it, right? Like
yeah, and then you might get there and you might realize either you don't like it or the people in that niche don't resonate with you as well as they could, or whatever. Right? Who knows what's going to happen?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it's just like get started,
Yeah,
just start coaching people in maybe just like sort of generally too and see what happens from there. It's also really great market research too to figure out like what problems are people really having.
yeah, yeah,
Um
yeah.
okay. Plus
Very true.
you meet people too by doing that. So like if you're just sitting around worrying about what your niche is going to be and like trying to figure that out, if you just get started and start actually coaching people kind of like generally, then that allows you to meet people, which allows you to have other discussions. And then they maybe introduce you to people or like introduce you to concepts that you wouldn't have even considered. Right.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, experience isn't necessarily, by the way, just work experience. Experience could be attending trainings, conversations with people,
Yeah.
being part of the conversation in different places and contexts. It's, being out there, will give
Mhm.
you a better understanding of the direction you want to go.
Yeah.
Okay.
One thing I just want to add that was really valuable for me was I interviewed people. So I wasn't really offering coaching, but I created a list of about 20 people. Um, some I knew, some I didn't really. Some were from my Instagram, some were like parents of my kids' friends. And I just set up 30-minute interviews with these people. And I had a whole list of questions and I created an Excel spreadsheet and I went through the questions and, everyone was happy to be interviewed, right? And answer some questions. Um, and it was really just questions around like, what were they experiencing? What difficulties were they having? What did they want? Like what was holding them back from having what they want? Like they were very just sort of general questions, but it gave me so much insight into like what women, in their kind of late 30s, early 40s were dealing with. And then from there, it allowed me to create content and, you know, move into, and I got a couple of clients from doing those interviews too. That's just a little
Yeah.
tip in terms of just like, that's one way to get started, even is just like start interviewing people, talking to people, and finding out what the problems are.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go. Not just being part of the conversation, but starting the conversation.
Yeah.
Really good. Okay. We might have to make this
Two parts, another two-parter.
another two-parter because we're only starting number 3 now.
Yeah.
And we're already like almost at time for this episode. I think we should like go through 3 and 4 because
Yeah.
we had a lot of preamble. We really like got into the weeds during the preamble. I think we should do 3 and 4 and then break for the week and next
Okay.
week finish off the list.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. All right. So number 3 is get curious. Get curious. Curiosity always, maybe not always, curiosity to kill the cat, but curiosity usually will serve you well as an entrepreneur. Being curious about what can you do, what works, what are other people doing, what do I like? Pay attention to the topics or issues that naturally pique your interest.
Yeah.
I obviously part of my niche right now is helping people with social media. And, every now and then somebody will say, well, I get into social media, I post what I got to post, and then I eject. Right. And then they wonder why social media is not serving them well. Well, because they're not exercising curiosity whatsoever.
Yeah.
Like part of being part of a system and utilizing it is, consuming from it as much as putting into it, right? Being curious, what else is going on here in this context where I want to attract clients? What are other people who serve the same niche up to? What are they talking about? What's important in the conversation right now?
Yeah.
That's a big part of it. Be
Yeah.
curious.
Huge. Being curious is huge. And also, I would add that it's just being curious about like what you're naturally drawn to. Like if you say you're going down the path of a specific niche, but you're always drawn back to researching about something else, then why not get curious about that interest that you have and figure out like how could I incorporate that into my niche or into my purpose or into like what I'm coaching on.
Yeah.
Like for me, for example, I've had all these niches, um, and I keep coming back to now, while this doesn't necessarily like create my niche, but I keep coming back to sort of these like divination tools, right? So like, tarot cards and oracle cards, and now I'm into palmistry. And so I got curious with that in terms of like, how can I start incorporating more of this unique interest that I have into my coaching?
Yeah.
It's not necessarily that I only want to be a palm reader, but how do I integrate that into coaching with people? Or how do I, or, this new kind of path that I'm on now is like, how do I help other coaches integrate their unique spiritual practices or specific interests into their coaching practice? And that's
Yeah.
kind of the new path that I'm on. Like, I really want to help coaches create their unique selling proposition around like how can you incorporate all the cool things that you like to do for you into developing those relationships with your clients and enhancing your sessions from that perspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that
Absolutely.
comes with curiosity, right? It just comes with naturally um, being interested in what you know. And it's also like tapping into your own knowing.
Yeah.
Because right? Like a lot of people aren't trusting of that inner knowing. And so then they overthink or they doubt themselves because they listen to other people. And I was listening to this podcast this morning and I loved it because she was talking a lot about paying attention and listening to your intuition. Um, and, decide, like you have to kind of decide, are you going to listen to the no's that you get from, people in your life, or are you going to listen to your own knowing? And that's a
Yeah.
decision that you really have to make. It's also a skill that you need to develop to learn how to listen to your own knowing and just ignore the no's, because at the end of the day, those no's are not your knowing. I loved that.
Mm.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And
Yeah.
like this is something that I've run up against so much because I went through like all these niches with coaching, and I've been, from the outside, it might look to some people like I'm struggling, right? But on the inside, I know I'm fine. I'm just going through the process and like, being patient with it.
Yeah.
Um, because I know that there's more for me. I know that deep and
Yeah.
I trust it.
Yeah. And it is, for you, things really have been developing quite a lot. And especially in the last year, like a lot has been falling into place and coming together. And
Yeah.
uh, you
But you
know,
know why? It's because I have learned how to trust me
mm,
and not listen to other people,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Um that's been a big thing.
Yeah. Which brings us awkwardly to our next point. Number 4, listen to feedback. Listen to feedback. And point number 4 says, pay attention to the feedback you receive. Um, well, this is going to make more sense from clients or from those you have helped in the past, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
This is not about letting other people tell you what to do. This is more about paying attention to feedback. Look for patterns in the feedback and in the stuff you are already helping clients with. This provides valuable insights into the areas where you have the most impact and where you can specialize. So, a really good example of this is 3 years ago, I was focusing almost 100% on running NLP and hypnotherapy and timeline therapy technique certifications for coaches. So I'd
Mhm.
run a live training certification, teach, and give certificates to the people that attended the trainings. And today, although my niche is the same, it's coaches, hypnotherapists, NLP practitioners, most of what I'm teaching is not skills certifications, it's business and social media, right? In fact, I have one hypnotherapy cert coming up in November. But other than that, everything else I've going on between now and the end of the year is business coaching, social media coaching, content coaching, the Simple Social Sanctuary membership, speaking coaching, public speaking coaching, because I paid very close attention to what my graduates and what my followers were asking for and needing and wanting, and the questions particularly that I was getting back and the responses to the questions, like, oh, Ryan, nobody's ever made it this simple before. Nobody's ever been able to help me solve this one little problem, and you were able to do it in seconds of effort.
Yeah.
That's all really good evidence about where a person's gifts lie and what might be a good direction to take your niche or your business.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like you did that really skillfully and it just made sense,
Yeah.
right? Like you didn't like force it.
Yeah.
It
Like
just happened organically.
there's the famous story of the crotchety old man who has a gas station, and all he wants to do, and it's on the side of the highway, all he wants to do is sell gas, right? All he wants to do is sell gas. And every day people come in, buy gas, and they say, hey, look, do you have water? I'm thirsty. And he would get annoyed because then he would give them a little plastic cup and they would go and fill up their water cup at the sink. And then one day somebody said, well, why don't you just sell bottled water and pop and slushies, right?
Yeah.
Pay attention to the feedback of, your clients, the people you served or whatever. And now gas stations these days make more money from the snacks that they sell in the inside than from the gasoline outside in a lot of cases. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah,
So
it's true.
anyways,
Yeah, listening to feedback is key because sometimes and I think this is something too that coaches get into, and I know I certainly did too. It's just sort of like you want to make it work for you, or it's like you're kind of like coming up with the idea of like what you think people need, but then you put it out there and nobody actually needs it, but they're giving you feedback on what they actually do need. So like it's important
yeah,
to listen to that. And like, while I know I went on a bit of a tangent about your knowing and like knowing what you want, it's like it's a discernment too. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
and I think it's also important to get feedback from not even just the clients, but like if you are working with a coach, you know what I mean? It's just sort of like it's this fine balance between what you want to be doing and like where you want to go, but then also like getting constructive criticism that is going to help you grow that part of you too.
yeah,
You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Um, and like because I think before I mentioned, like I had a business coach for a bit that I was working with, and he was just like, you've got to like focus on this niche for 18 months. And I listened to him for about 6 months. And then I was like, no, I'm out. I can't do this. But I'm glad I did stick with that because as a result, I got some really great feedback from the people that I was working with and from myself in terms of like, okay, this isn't for me. This does not feel aligned. So yes, listen to your own knowing, but then also listen to the feedback. That's going to
yeah,
help you, yeah, extend your own knowing or something.
yeah. Agreed. Cool. Okay.
Cool.
I think
So
we'll
is that
wrap.
where we're stopping?
I
Just like
think we'll
that,
wrap
eh?
it there. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, and then yeah, the rest of the items on the list are really, really good and really on point. So, folks, one of the best things you can do for getting clarity around your niche is to listen to this episode and listen to next week's episode, where we finish this list for what are the key things you need to be doing and knowing to allow your niche to develop organically. So my advice is, now you've listened to this episode, let this all simmer. Maybe do some relaxation, maybe some meditation, and see what starts to come to mind. Don't strain yourself by any means.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then visit with us again next week and listen to the remainder of this list.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I
That's what I
think sitting with yourself is like a good idea. Really
got.
sit with yourself and like reflect on like what do I really want and you know, what do I also too, I think another one that I'll leave you with is like look at where you were 10 years ago and figure out how can I like what has my growth been and how can I use that to help people?
Yeah, yeah.
Because that's
I'll
often
agree
going to
with you on
feel the
that one.
most authentic
Yeah,
to you.
yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Well, I'm excited to talk more about this next week.
Yeah, me too. This is a great list, and this is an important topic. And yeah, cool. Everybody join the Simple Social Sanctuary, RyanMontes.com. Come
Yeah,
hang
and
out with
join my Ascension Circle. You can find out more about that at Alana Banks Coaching on Instagram.
me. Cool. All right. I guess that's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.